2008 World Champions of Baseball.
The Philadelphia Eagles are Super Bowl champions. Eagles fans everywhere, this is for you.
Now entering the game for Philly Press Box Radio, Bill Furman and Jim Chet Chesko.
It's Wednesday, May 14th, 2025, and the Philadelphia Eagles are still Super Bowl champions. Welcome to the Philly Press Box Radio Roundtable, brought to you by the Irish Rover Station House in Langhorne, PA, Cavs, Philly, Tailgates, and the STT Sports Network. I'm Bill Furman. I'll be your host tonight, along with my partner, Jim Chet Chesko. And Chet, the Phillies are 2.5 games out of first place in the NL East after today's early win, and they have a lead here in tonight's game so far. The NBA draft ping pong balls have been played in the Cooper Flag sweepstakes. The Sixers didn't get number one, by the way, pal. They have the third pick. The NFL schedule comes out tonight at 8 p.m. We've seen the leak copy. I don't know if we're going to get a chance to show that or not. The Flyers have named a new coach just today in Rick Tocchet. We've seen Pete Rose, Shoeless Joe Jackson have been reinstated into Major League Baseball. That has me fired up, pal. And we're going to talk Phillies promotions and take a deep dive into the NFL draft. We have so much to talk about, Chet. I don't think the hour's long enough.
Well, for mid-May, with neither of Philly's winter teams in the postseason, man, there sure is a lot to talk about. We're going to cover all of it as best we can anyway over this next hour.
Yeah, squeezing it into an hour is going to be tight. So hang with us, and we will do our best to get it done. Have a couple great guests tonight making return visits to Philly Press Box Radio. In the NFL draft analyst for the All-City Network covering the Eagles, FRAN DUFFY, and the Phillies director of fun and games, JOHN BRAZER.
Two great guests. And Bill, this is, I think, only the first or second maybe time that this is the case in our long history. Neither interview is live, as we actually had to pre-tape both of them. But, man, there's a lot of great content in both of them. And, Bill, you mentioned at the top the fact that it is scheduled release day. As you said, this is not the official version, but there is the Eagles' 2025 schedule as we know it at 7:03 p.m. on Wednesday, May 14th. What is your initial reaction? That is a pretty brutal schedule, my friend.
Yeah, it is. And we knew they were going to have a tough schedule. The fact that they play, how many, what's that, 2 Monday nights, a Saturday, a Friday, a couple Thursdays, they're going to be all over, as the NFL will try to capitalize on the Eagles' popularity, get them on national TV as much as they can. I will tell you, I believe it's the third straight year the Eagles come to Tampa in September. Yeah. It's miserable. I ain't going to the game again this year. Why they keep bringing them down here in September is beyond me, but I'm not going.
All we need is a Tuesday or a Wednesday game now, Bill, and the schedule will be complete.
Right. How about Kansas City or Dallas and Kansas City, the first two games?
Yeah.
Whew. It's going to be tough out of the blocks, but hey, this is a good team, and they're the team to beat.
Speaking of the Cowboys, I love the fact that the Eagles and Cowboys will kick off the NFL season on September 4th. The Eagles will get to raise the banner and show off the Lombardi trophy with the stinking Cowboys on the other sideline. That is going to be cool.
Yeah, and then go to Kansas City where they're going to be ready to play. So, the thing, we're not going to get too much into this. The thing about this NFL season and all the NFL seasons now and the way camps go and all that, you got to get to about the fifth game to get guys really in shape and really playing. So, there's a lot of key matchups here early in the year, but, you got guys guys get hurt and all that early in the year, and they're just rusty still.
Yeah, I don't I just saw that Joe Howe was a little late joining us because he got his fork stuck in some seafood.
Yeah, good. Sorry, Joe. Well, hey, Chad, as you mentioned, due to some scheduling issues, you and I visited with FRAN DUFFY last night to deep dive into the NFL draft, the Eagles, and more. I tell you what, we covered a bunch, and this is football gold for those of you that like the draft and like the Eagles.
Yeah, man, Fran knows his stuff, and everyone pay attention because there will be a quiz following the interview with Fran. Here we go.
All right, and with that, let's welcome NFL draft analyst for All City Network and the Eagles coverage for PHLY. Fran Duffy, welcome back, Fran. It's been a long time.
Bill, Chet, it's a pleasure. It has been a long time, but excited to chat it up with you guys.
Great to see you again, Fran. Let's get started with this one. Were you surprised at all that the Eagles were able to strike a deal to keep tight end Dallas Goedert around for another year? And what does that mean for an already loaded Eagles offense?
Yeah, if you asked the version of myself in like mid-March, late March, yes, that version would be surprised. Once we got through the draft and nothing happened and the Eagles did not draft a tight end, it felt like this was an inevitability. I think because, look, at the end of the day, the Eagles are a better team. It's a better offense with Dallas Goedert on the roster. They were not going to just outright release him. That would have been shocking for me. So I think that, okay, well, if they can't get a deal done, musical chairs kind of ended in terms of the tight end market being solidified. It was a great tight end class in the draft. And I think that kind of, it certainly affected this situation. So once you got through draft weekend and there was no deal set with another team, I felt like it was only a matter of time before this situation kind of turned out similar to what happened with Josh Sweat a year ago, where it's okay, let's come to some kind of settlement, some kind of agreement, one year deal, both sides happy, and then we'll kind of go our separate ways here a year from now. And who knows? Maybe things change and they're able to come to some kind of a long-term extension by the time we get to 2026. But no, I think once we got to that part of the calendar, this was not surprising.
Hey, Fred, before we dive into the Eagles, because we're going to get into all that, what was your take on the Travis Hunter deal between Jacksonville right off the shoot? 2 firsts, a second, a fourth. Is Travis Hunter that kind of guy? It almost seems like a heist for the Browns.
Yeah, I mean, he's everyone throws around generational prospect, and I'm not one to throw that out just because it gets used so often. There's no way there are this many generational players. I will say that Travis Hunter is a generational profile. We just don't see guys come along that, play to the level that he did on both sides of the ball, basically at 100% of the time. That just does not happen in today's game. So that is truly unique. I do think, look, I did something with him that I have never done before. We've seen some two-way players over the course of, the last decade or so in college football. Like, again, no one that did it to the level of Travis Hunter, but I ended up doing a completely separate report on Travis Hunter, the wide receiver, and on Travis Hunter, the corner. And the way I basically approached it was, all right, if he were only to focus on corner, this is how I would write him up. If he were to only focus on receiver, this is how I'd write him up. In my final big board that I made available on my draft guide over with PHLY, the corner version of Travis Hunter was my number 2 overall player. The wide receiver version of Travis Hunter was my number 3 overall player. So it just gives you an idea of just the overall talent level for this kid. Now, depending on how this snap share kind of divvies out, if he's going to be a 100% wide receiver and a 20% corner, or 100% corner, and he's going to play 15 snaps a game at wide receiver, yeah, that's going to affect how that value kind of shakes out, right? If you're only going to play wide receiver 15 snaps a game, you're not the number 1 wide receiver on the board. But I think when you look at his overall talent level, yeah, he's a special player. All that to say, yeah, it was a little bit rich for my blood, what Jacksonville did. I applaud the aggressiveness. I think that it's really, it's certainly fun to watch as a consumer of the draft and of the NFL. But to me, a little bit too rich for my blood. I agree with you. I think Cleveland made off well in that deal.
Yeah, we're going to keep an eye on him in the NFL for sure. All right, the Eagles draft. Most experts gave the Birds at least a B, some, even higher, but some folks were skeptical of the guy who was taken at the very end of the second round, implying that was still too high for him. I'm talking, of course, about Texas safety Andrew Mukuba. What's your assessment of him, Fran?
Yeah, I enjoyed watching Mukuba. This is a player that I've studied going back to his freshman year at Clemson when he first popped on film for me. I was studying a former Clemson defensive back at the time, and I remember seeing this really aggressive safety come flying from the deep part of the field down into the flat, making a tackle. I'm like, who is this guy? The guy came down in a blur. I'm like, oh, he's a true freshman. Like, all right, let's write his name down for the future, and ended up being Mukuba. He became a 4-year starter at college, 3 years at Clemson, 1 year at Texas. And this year at Texas was when the production really took off. I mean, he only had 1 pick in his first 3 seasons in college with the Clemson Tigers. He had 5 last year with the Longhorns on one of the better defenses in college football. You had playmakers at all 3 levels, and he was certainly a guy that kind of set the benchmark there in the secondary. And I think when you're looking at Makuba, what stands out about him is the physicality and the aggressiveness, but then also the instincts in zone coverage. And that's something that I think really kind of made him attractive for Vic Fangio in this Eagles defense. We know how much zone defense they play on the back end there under Fangio. And so, yeah, for me, like when I'm looking at it in a vacuum and I'm evaluating all these guys on an island, right? So scheme agnostic, not projecting forward into any one system. Yeah, Makuba, he was a little bit lower for me. Basically, the way I had it was I had Malachi Starks and Nick Emanwari basically as like 1A, 1B, almost identical grades at the top of my board at safety. And then I had a cluster of like 4 or 5 guys. And Makuba was in that group, Kevin Winston Jr. from Penn State, Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, Jonas Sanker from Virginia. I had a bunch of these guys all kind of clustered together. And I had Makuba the lowest of that cluster, but all of them were so bunched together. And it was like, all right, well, if you like the physicality of Makuba, you've got that, but he's a little bit lighter. He's the smaller of those 4 players. Maybe Xavier Watts had the best ball skills, but he wasn't as rangy or as explosive as Makuba. Winston was the biggest and the most physical, but not as athletic as these other guys. And Sanker didn't have like 1 A+ trait, but he was just really well-rounded, and he was like B+ across the board. And so really it comes down to a matter of like, all right, what makes sense for your scheme and for your system? And I think when you're Vic Fangio, you're the Eagles. I just like the Travis Hunter thing, I applaud the aggressiveness, because it takes something to kind of stick your neck out and say, all right, we have this cluster of players at a position. This is our guy, right? To show the vindication, like, yeah, we're going to pick this guy above everybody else. But I get why they got to that situation. He does need to clean some things up from like a tackling standpoint. He'll miss some tackles. The weight is a little, a sub 200-pound safety can be a little bit concerning, but the instincts, the physicality, we know how physical this Eagles defense was, especially in the second half down the stretch. I mean, in the playoffs, that was their identity. They were just going to out physical every team that they went up against, and you saw it in every single playoff game. He's going to step in and be able to fit that mentality right away. And so, I definitely see why they got to that decision to make him the 64th pick of the draft.
Hey, Fran, I had 2 favorites on the defensive side of the ball. Jalen Walker being one that I knew they probably couldn't get unless they made a big deal. The other was Jahad Campbell, and they got him. And, man, I really am excited about that pick.
Yeah, Campbell's fun. Honestly, I personally liked Campbell more than Jalen Walker, in every facet. Everyone talked about Walker's versatility and, he can come down over the guard and he can rush the passer, and he gives you all this versatility there. I struggled with him. Everybody, you talk about like hybrid defenders in today's game. And there's a fine line between hybrid, and it used to be, and you guys remember this, like everybody was a tweener coming out. Oh, this guy's like, he's kind of stuck in between. To me, Jalen Walker was on the wrong side of that debate in my eyes. I struggled with what is his best fit. With Campbell, I thought he was a better off-ball backer than Walker. And honestly, I thought he had more upside as a rusher than Walker. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, there is some risk involved. This is a guy that was basically for everybody a consensus top 20, top 15 type of player in this draft. Now, this was a lesser draft than a typical year, but he was considered to be a top 15 talent by most teams. But he was off a number of boards due to injury. He had the shoulder surgery right after the combine. There's reports that he might have to get this other shoulder on the opposite side worked on after the season. Some people worried about a knee as well. This has been a knock on a number of Alabama players for the last 2 decades. The guys come in just, they beat up, just from the rigors of daily work there, playing for Nick Saban, and obviously only 1 year removed from the Saban era. And so I think when you're looking at Campbell, only 2 years at linebacker, so there's, he's a little bit green, but to me, the size, the physicality, the tackling, he's as sure a tackler as you're going to get coming out of the college ranks, especially for a guy with his physical gifts. So there's a lot to like there. I'm excited about his upside. He was my number 1 linebacker in this class. Yeah, I agree with you, Bill. He's a guy that I'm excited about in this defense.
As I put up a graphic of the other Eagles picks, all the picks, as a matter of fact, any of those that stand out for you, Fran, either in a positive way or ones that you maybe aren't so high on?
Yeah, honestly, when I went back as the draft ended, I look, day 2 didn't go their way, right? They traded down multiple times, so they ended up with a boatload of day 3 picks. And as I was going through, on Monday after the draft, Sunday after the draft, and just kind of going pick by pick and saying, all right, hey, what's the reasoning behind this pick? How did they come to this decision? A lot of these were fair bets. Like I get Ty Robinson. I thought that value was really strong. A lot of people were talking about him as early as round 2. That was a little early, a little rich for me. So getting him in the 4th round, I think was perfectly fine. This is a guy that tested extremely well, really high character, playing for Matt Rule out at Nebraska. Now, a little concerning that this is a 6th-year senior who didn't really break out like production-wise until this 6th year. Like he had been like a 3 or 4 year starter, but he didn't really post numbers until he was a 23-year-old going up against the younger guys. And so that's always a little concerning for me in today's game. I would say the one that I'm most excited about, probably Mac McWilliams. This is a guy at Central Florida who played primarily on the outside, but with his size profile, probably projects better to playing as a nickel corner. But I like the instincts. I like the physicality and competitiveness. This is a guy that, to me, going down to the Senior Bowl, I thought he was one of the best corners down there in Mobile, did an outstanding job in one-on-ones where you really saw those route instincts show up. And so Mac McWilliams is a guy that catches my eye. And then they took a number of flyers on offensive linemen. Drew Kendall has the highest floor, the backup center that they think has some guard flexibility. I kind of think that he's probably more of a center only moving into the NFL, but I really liked his floor. I feel really good about him sticking in the NFL. And then they took the 2 tackles, Miles Hinton from Michigan and Cam Williams from Texas. And the way I would describe both guys are kind of like boom bust, high variance players. With Miles Hinton, the variance is wide, but it's, kind of like, think of it like the middle of the screen, the heart monitor. With Cam Williams, the highs are higher. Like the upside, to me, is bigger there with Williams, but the lows are lower. There's some ugly film out there with Cam Williams, and a lot of that happened down the stretch. He took a lot of penalties, gave up a lot of sacks. It was only 1 year as a starter. But the way I look at Cam Williams, guys, and we know this is the time where it's a lot of the too early 2026 mock drafts, looking ahead to next year in college football. Cam Williams would have been on a lot of those mock drafts. He would have been a guy that would have appeared in a lot of those where people were projecting forward. Hey, this year was a little bit up and down, but one more year as a starter. This is a guy with that top level talent. So to get him in the 6th round, I think it's a fair swing to try and take.
Fran, before we get to moving on to next year's draft, we want to talk a little bit about that. I have to ask you, as a unbiased guy that does this for a living, what the heck happened to Shedeur Sanders?
Yeah, it's a long story, but I guess honestly not that long. At the end of the day, look, when I studied Shedeur Sanders last summer, so off of his junior film, I thought, okay, this guy has the like low end starter, high end backup type of tape. To me, that was someone that is not unique for guys that are coming in. Sometimes players that are in 1st round mock drafts, I watched him the year before, and it's like, yeah, like he can grow into that. If he takes the next steps. Well, he didn't take the next steps. There were flashes, but the thing with Shedeur is that, and I wrote this in my profile, going into this past season, is that he needed to be like a pocket assassin, because he's not a plus arm talent. Like he's not going to wow you with his velocity and with the way that he can drive the football. He's accurate. He throws with good touch, but he's not a great athlete to get himself out of trouble. And so when you're looking at like the physical dimensions, the physical talent is not quite there. So in order for him to be a 1st round caliber quarterback, he's got to be nails mentally, right? And that means like knowing where to go with the football, understanding how to manage a muddy pocket. And that's, to me, honestly, Bill, that's the area where he really struggled, is being able to manage the pocket, understand, like sacks, a lot of the people will point to offensive linemen. That's as much a quarterback stat as anything else, and every sack is a little bit different. I'm not saying every single one of those sacks was on Shedeur, but that was an area in terms of like his pocket management where I thought he regressed this year. It was already a little bit of an issue for him based off the junior film, and I thought that he developed some really bad habits this past year and things that honestly he would not be able to get away with moving into the college level. And then you take into account everything else coming with him. Obviously, by all accounts, like just did not handle the pre-draft process well when it comes to like the interviews with teams, going back to the Shrine Bowl, the combine, didn't take 30 visits, said, I'm only going to do with a handful of teams. And, that came back to work against him until it was too late. And so I think at the end of the day, it was a confluence of factors there. It was a big combination, but it certainly resulted in him falling a lot further than anybody really imagined.
Fran, of the Eagles' division rivals, the Cowboys, Giants, and Commanders, of course, who had the best draft? And what do you think of the Giants' selection of Jackson Dart?
Yeah, Chet, not a big Jackson Dart guy personally. I struggled with him, and this is a player. I talked about him in the summer with some area scouts down, that cover the Southeast, and basically all the conversations were, like, maybe early day 3, this is a guy that doesn't have like plus physical talent, kind of like what we were talking about with Shador. He's not going to wow you from a physical standpoint. He's pretty athletic, but the arm, the accuracy, is just okay. It's more like product of the system, product of the scheme. And it's an outstanding offense down there with Lane Kiffin. And it was like, all right, get through the season. Kind of same deal. Anyone I talked with, I like him on day 3. I like him on day 3. Senior Bowl, I'm down there. I watched every single throw in practice. Same deal. Talk with everyone. Solid. It wasn't like all inspiring. Then we get to February, and that's when like the buzz started building. Oh, like he could get into day 2, and then it was like, oh, he might get into day 1. It's like it got so crazy, and people were talking about him going like number 3, number 9, and I'm like, that was way too rich for me. And I know that there were a lot of people in the league that felt the same way, area scouts that felt the same way, and so I still, at the end of the day, was surprised that he ended up being a first-round pick. I hope he succeeds. I hope all these guys obviously do well, but that one very much surprised me. I know that, there were a lot of guys. It was one of those things where you talk with coaches, you talk with players that were, in that building at Ole Miss, and they all swear by him. But I remember talking with a scout in like late March, early April about it. And he was like, yeah, like, a lot of quarterbacks, like that's the case, right? That alone shouldn't be able to get you drafted in the first round. So we'll see how that works out, for the Giants. But to the first part of your question, Chet, I would say of the 3 teams, it's close between Washington and Dallas, but I would have to go with Dallas. I really like the way that they approached the draft this year. I was interested to see what they would do. Picking at 12. Many people felt like, all right, they want a pass catcher. It's going to be a receiver, and so. When, going in, I was like, all right, if Tetero McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona, falls to them at 12, that's going to be the pick. And the question I had for a lot of people and all the conversations I had was, all right, well, what if McMillan is off the board? If he goes, there was rumors about, him going number 5 to Jacksonville, or if he went, obviously he went number 8 to Carolina, but if he went to 9 to the New Orleans Saints, like which way is Dallas going to go? Are they still going to go and force receiver, or are they going to go line of scrimmage and maybe go best player available kind of situation? Because for me, Matthew Golden at 12 overall, that just never added up for me. Nice player, but not a guy that I viewed as a top 15 pick. And most people I spoke with felt the same way. Now, when I asked that question, it was, oh, yeah, I think they're going to go receiver. Now, I applaud them for not doing that and saying, yeah, you know what, like we need a receiver, but we are going to go best player available. I love the addition of Tyler Booker. I think that's a guy. You lose Zach Martin, you lose Tyron Smith the last couple of years, someone to really just kind of raise the floor of that offense. I think he's plug and play starter, and it's going to be a really fun battle to watch with he and Jalen Carter now for the next decade plus between those two guys twice a year. We'll see that in week 1. And then going to round 2, they get the local kid and Donovan Ezeraku, the pass rusher from Boston College, who I was not the biggest fan of in round 1, but you get to round 2, I think it's a little bit more palpable for my liking. And then I love what they did in round 3. Siobhan Revel, the corner from ECU. This is a first round talent who, he's an older player who started his career at junior college, then goes to ECU, starts his first year there, and then tears his ACL a couple games into year 2. But he's 6'1", 6'2", long arms, 4.3 speed, production, through the roof on a per snap basis. Guy that can play the ball in the air. He's physical. I mean, it's like the comparison I would make for Eagles fans that are listening. It's like, imagine DRC, right? So you have like long, explosive, can turn and run with anybody, but extremely physical and competitive. Like it's going to do all the dirty work, and he's a really, really fun player. So if he's older, from a smaller school, didn't play a ton, coming off an ACL, that part of the profile is worrisome. But the film, he's a first round talent. So I do like what the Dallas Cowboys did. Unfortunately for Eagles fans in the draft.
Hey, Fran, I want to look real quick at next year because I know you're already working on it. Drew Aller out of Penn State is already looked upon to be one of the top quarterbacks. Arch Manning hasn't played a lot yet. We're going to get a look at him, but I also wanted to get a quick take from you on Nick Singleton and Katron Allen out of Penn State. We got a bunch of first round picks again coming out of Happy Valley.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're looking at Aller, it certainly seems like he's going to be a first-round pick. I'm excited to dive a little bit deeper onto the film. Basically, what I've seen so far, first of all, I love that offense. Schematically, it's just a very fun offense to study. They got really creative last year. I know it was the first year in that system. Now, it can be tough to disentangle some of that when you're trying to evaluate Aller in a vacuum, right? And so when I look at Aller, I think, number one, his ability to be kind of a caretaker offensively. I think that's one of his strong suits. He rarely puts the ball in harm's way. I think we all kind of latch on to that final throw against Notre Dame, the interception, middle of the field, but that has been more the exception than the rule. I think when you're looking at Drew Aller. So honestly, like when I'm projecting him forward, and I've not completely done my study of him. I'm going to do more here in the coming weeks, but I actually want to see him push the limits a little bit further. Like I want to see him try more of those throws, moving forward into his senior year. And so, for me, when I look at him, I'm hoping that we see him kind of let his hair down a little bit and really kind of push the limits as a passer. To me, like that's what I like about Garrett Nussmeier, from LSU is that, like, he's going to throw some interceptions, but he's going to push the limits and test some tight window throws. He doesn't have the arm that Drew Aller has, to be honest. But to me, I like the way that Nussmeier plays the position a little bit more. And then you get to Arch Manning. I mean, the guy's started 2 games. I don't want to get ahead of my skis here, but the talent is outstanding. And the way that he's going to operate Sarkisian's offense, I tend to think he's not going to come out in this draft. I tend to think that he's probably going to go back for another year. I just don't think that a Manning is going to be coming out of college football as a 1-year starter. I think that he's going to put more time on task at the college level before he does that. But I am legitimately giddy to watch him in that offense because I'm a big fan of Sarkisian and what they do. So just seeing him kind of operate that offense should be a lot of fun.
Hey, Fran, one final Eagles question I'm going to sneak in. I don't think anybody's expecting Saquon Barkley to have a second straight 2,000-yard regular season. I mean, you never know. But do you look for Jalen to throw the ball more often this coming season, which would probably make AJ and Devontae quite happy?
Yeah, my guess is that this does become a little bit more of a pass first operate. Not I shouldn't say pass first, but I do think that the ratio tilts back a little bit more towards the pass game. And we've talked about this over on the PHLY Eagle Show. Myself, Bo Wolf, Zach Berman is just kind of the direction of this offense. And honestly, like you look at this team, they're Super Bowl favorites as we sit here in mid-May. And I think when you're projecting them forward, and I know this is schedule week, so we're going to be talking about the season here in the coming days. I think when you're looking at this team, they had the number 1 defense in football. Defense is very volatile year to year. So it's tough to expect that they're going to have a repeat performance, especially when you consider the fact that they lost some key players up front. So they're going to have some guys stepping up into new roles. And then offensively, I mean, who are you expecting to be better than they were, the better versions of themselves than they were a year ago, right? You had Saquon Barkley, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith. Honestly, when I look at it, I'm like, the guy that can take his game to the next level on a more consistent basis might be Jalen, right? It would be a guy like, all right, as a passer, if he's able to take that next step on a consistent basis, obviously he was lights out down the stretch in the postseason. But if he can play that way over the course of the regular season, I think that probably means more production in the pass game and certainly more for AJ Brown and Devontae Smith.
Fran, one final question for me. You sat in the building for a lot of years there with the Eagles. Howie Roseman went from the village idiot to a genius in the draft. How did the system come together? It's not luck, I don't think. You got to have your homework done, and then you got to be fortunate, obviously. But how did Howie Roseman turn this thing around?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the draft is a tough cookie to crack. I think when you're looking at it, and that's not even the right analogy, the tough nut to crack. But I think when you're looking at it, look, there is a little bit of variance involved here, right? Where it's people evaluating people, and there's a lot of unknown in that. And so, to me, when you're looking at it, I think that you see coaches, you see general managers, talent evaluators, they're going to go on runs, and sometimes you're really, really hot. I think of John Schneider in Seattle. They were on that heater for like a 2 or 3 year stretch where they couldn't miss. And then they go like 7-8 years where it's like, man, what did they draft? Like 1 Pro Bowl in this stretch, right? And obviously, look, I think when you're looking at Howie, to me, when I'm looking at decision makers across the NFL, I look at it by process, and decision making from that standpoint. And to me, like being in that building, I trust the way that Howie Roseman kind of sets the table for everybody. I think that one of the best qualities of the in his cupboard is that and this is from talking with so many people that have been in and out of that room over the course of the last decade plus, is that he does an outstanding job, especially over the last few years, of making sure that everybody's voice is heard. So if you are an assistant coach, if you're a coordinator, if you're an area scout, if you're with the analytics team, if you're with player development, if you are on the strength staff, whoever you are, if you've got a voice in this building, the medical staff, everybody that has these touch points with these players, you're going to feel that you are involved and that your voice is being heard in this process. And at the end of the day, like you're not going to find consensus. There are too many people, in that room where it's very rare that, you're going to have 15 reports on a player in a building. When you look at like everybody all the way up, scouting assistants up, they might have reports on Jahad Campbell. Not all 15 people saw him the same, right? Some people may have graded him as a Pro Bowler. Some people may have graded him as a backup. Some people may have graded him as an edge rusher. Some may have graded him as a Mike linebacker or a Sam linebacker, right? Like everybody's going to have different viewpoints, but at the end of the day, you want to collect all of that information. You want to get everybody in. Let's hash it out. Let's talk it through and try and get as close to a consensus as we possibly can. And at the end of the day, like when we draft a guy, when we make that phone call, that guy's an Eagle now. Now it's all of our jobs to set that guy up for success. And some teams I think are better at that than others. And I think that's something that Howie has done a really good job of kind of fostering that environment over the last several years.
Fran, it's been a 6-year wait, but man, this was worth it. It was a lot of fun. Tell our viewers where they can find you on PHLY.
Yeah, so you can go and check us out over at PHLY, allphly.com. And that's where, look, I've got all my scouting reports on this entire draft class are up there now. By the way, and if you're looking for like scouting reports on all these NBA draft and NHL draft prospects, we've got all that covered over there as well.
Yes.
But yeah, Eagles coverage with Bo and with Zach on a daily basis. We have one show a day, every 5 days a week. We're writing articles. We've got all kinds of stuff. So you can go check us out there. You can follow me on Twitter, on Blue Sky, wherever you get your Eagles content.
All right, Fran. Well, we appreciate it. Let's do it again. And it's been a lot of fun.
I appreciate it, guys. We'll talk again soon.
Jed, that was gold right there, buddy.
Man, that guy lives and breathes NFL football, and he's good.
Yeah, and we tried to cover as much as we could with him in the 20 minutes that ended up being
27 minutes. Yeah.
27. We could have talked to him for 2 hours.
Oh, yeah.
Easily. So we'll get Fran back on as the season goes on, or the off season goes on, and we'll see what we can do with that. But great stuff.
Yeah, he said he would love to come back again, when camp opens or ahead of the season. So we're going to take him up on that.
Absolutely. Well, hey, Chad, Philly Press Box Radio is now part of the STT Sports Network. As in Set the Trends. It's a network set up by our pal, Phil Stiefel, host of the terrific Trending in the AM show that you can find every weekday morning on the STT Sports Network YouTube channel. Check out Phil and be sure to subscribe to the channel. Phil's show is on there. So is ours. Yeah. You can find Philly Press Box Radio there in addition to on our own YouTube channel and on our Facebook page. Again, it's the STT Sports Network, setting the trends for what sports talk should be.
And Bill, Phil is doing a show tonight, a special Trending in the PM, I guess, 9 p.m., breaking down the Eagles' schedule, which will be official as of 8 o'clock Wednesday evening. So yeah, look for Phil.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because while Fran was playing, I looked at that a little bit closer. I didn't realize the first time that they played the Giants week 6 and 8, and they play the Commanders week 16 and 18.
Yeah, very close.
2 out of 3 weeks in both cases. That's kind of odd.
Let's see. Do I have that?
You do. You already put it up.
Yeah, I just wanted to put it up again and confirm. Yeah, Giants weeks 6 and 8, Commanders 16 and 18. Nice.
Yeah, and that week 17 at Buffalo, I believe, is December the 28th. Better bring your woolies to that game.
I will not be in Buffalo. In fact, I was thinking about going to Green Bay in week 10, but it's a night game in November. No.
I'll tell you what, it's a fun trip. It's a fun place to go.
I'm a wuss. Okay, September, October, November at night, no.
Malloy told me that. Hey, tell us what's going on over at the Irish Rover Station House.
Well, that I can tell you about for sure. The Irish Rover Station House, one of my favorite places, as you are well aware, Bill. They got good times going there all the time, especially in the spring and summer when the Rover's big outside patio is open to enjoy. You know by now that the Irish Rover always has killer burger Thursdays, dinner specials Thursday through Sunday, happy hour deals Monday through Friday, live music most Saturday nights. Oh, plus a $5 Sunday Fun Day menu. And always, most importantly for some people, 24 beers on tap. And check this out. Coming up Friday evening, it is Stella night at the Rover. Yeah, this Friday, 6 to 8 p.m., Stella drink specials, and you can get a complimentary Stella chalice. Then on Tuesday, the 27th, later this month, another popular paint and sip event is on the slate. Get your tickets, as that almost always sells out. The Irish Rover Station House is on Bellevue Avenue in Langhorne and on the web at IrishRoverStationHouse.com. And with that, Bill, we say hello again to Merrill.
Hi, football fans. This is Merrill Reese, and you're listening to Bill and Chet on Philly Press Box Radio. It's good.
I wonder if Merrill thinks his schedule's good. We'll have to check that out. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Chet, the NBA draft ping pong balls didn't go to Sixers' way as far as getting the Cooper Flag #1 ball. Dallas got that amid a lot of controversy. The Sixers ended up with a third pick. What say you about the controversy?
Well, we're going to talk more about the Sixers and the draft next month ahead of the June 25th draft. But for now, the good news is they do get to keep their pick this year. Remember, if the lottery balls determined it was out of the top 6, they wouldn't. It would go to OKC. But they not only get to keep the pick, they actually moved up a couple of slots to number 3. Now, number 1 is expected to be for the Mavericks, Cooper Flag, of course. That's a given. Number 2 is likely to be Rutgers' Dylan Harper. He'll be going to the Spurs, likely. The Sixers will then, at number 3, get to choose from the likes of another Rutgers player, 18-year-old Ace Bailey, who turns 19 in August, Baylor guard VJ Edgecombe, and Texas swingman Trey Johnson. And I saw Amy Fadul on TV yesterday. That would be her choice, Trey Johnson out of Texas. So we'll see what happens. And again, we'll talk more about that next month. But hey, whatever.
What do you make of the controversy? Don't be skipping out on me.
Was it fixed, is what you're asking?
Well, that seems to be a lot of talk out about that.
There's a lot of evidence that, certain teams seem to get, favored.
Well, the Dallas made the
years.
worst trade in the last decade and end up with the reward of getting the best player in the draft after trading the best player, one of the best players.
And like after LeBron left Cleveland the first time, they ended up getting the first pick. It has happened on 4 or 5 occasions over the years, dating all the way back to 85, and Patrick Ewing going to the Knicks, number 1 overall. Who am I to say, Bill? I honestly don't know. Yeah, you do. It does make you wonder, though.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, it's when it's happened more than once, like 5 times, it kind of looks like a trend, doesn't it?
Malloy is calling me a Woods. Yeah. Okay, fine. It does kind of look like a trend, though. And we'll see how the Sixers can screw it up this time around, Bill.
We'll find out. Hey, Chet, while we got a second, let's throw in here that the word started to buzz this afternoon that Rick Tocchet was going to be the new Flyers head coach. That is now official. What do you make of them going back to the well and bringing another Flyers guy in? You good with that?
Well, it has worked, I guess, a little bit on occasion, and other times it has not worked so well. But they've tried the other approach in recent years, taking the old guy from the Rangers and then Torts, who was with the Islanders and other spots. If he's a good coach, he's a good coach. We talked about him a few weeks ago. His record is actually, I think, a little below 500 overall, even though he did win the Jack Adams Award the one year as Coach of the Year. Who knows? I mean, he's certainly a likable guy. He knows the game. Is he the answer? I don't know. We're going to have to get Sam Carchidi or Bill Meltzer or one of our hockey experts on to talk about that.
Well, what we are going to know is they're going to be tough. They're going to play physical because that's everything Rick Tocchet is. So, and that'd be good because half the time it looked like they were playing with eggs in their pocket. So,
yeah, that's true.
We need to bring a little bit of toughness back. Broad Street Bully days are gone, but you can play a little bit tough. That's for sure.
He can't play goal, however, so that's going to be a problem.
Well, that is a problem. Hey, Chet, I got to throw this up here because Dave Lavoie, our pal Dave, put up two posts. Can anyone explain how Aaron McDonald's is considered one of our aces? Because he
served up a million fat burgers.
There you go, Dave.
Yeah.
Good job. Hey,
yeah,
Chet,
the bad Nola is back tonight. As we speak, the Phils are now down 7-6. It's back and forth game, still only the fourth inning, I believe. But yeah, Nola had a couple of good outings, but now again, not so good.
Not so good tonight. 8 hits through 3 innings. That's not good. Hey, what could be better than a summer of Phillies baseball and tailgating with the best tailgaters in Philadelphia? Bob Cavanaugh and the gang at Cavs Philly Tailgates.
These are the guys you're talking about, Bill. Terrific catering business for 35 years now. Known for their tailgate parties, Cavs is a 3-time winner of Philly Tailgate's Jack Daniels Great American Tailgate Party Contest and a past winner of the Philly Daily News Tailgate Award. Cavs also does corporate events, parties, you name it. Of course, Cav hosts tailgates before all Eagles games outside the link and occasionally before Phillies games outside Citizens Bank Park. For example, there's one before a big Phillies-Mets battle on Saturday, June 21st, and another before a Phillies-Orioles game in August when a busload or two of folks from Baltimore will join in the fun, so that'll be a great time. Get details on all upcoming events at Cavs' website, which is phillytailgates.com. And if you have questions, you can email them at cavscatering@verizon.net. By the way, Cav and his partner Vince at Philly Sports Trips are already taking bookings for not only Eagles trips this fall, they'll be busy with that over the next month or so once the official schedule is announced, which is tonight. And then, they're taking the bookings for a 6-day Clearwater spring training trip next March. Cavs Philly Tailgates is the way to go.
And we're sure they'll be all over that trip to Tampa that we talked about September the 28th.
You know it.
So check that out. So, Chet, you visited with Phillies Director of Fun and Games, John Brazer, yesterday afternoon. Again, due to scheduling issues, we had to do that taped. Tell us what the Phillies have planned for the fans this summer. Remember, we had John a couple weeks ago. We had some technical difficulties, so we couldn't finish that up. So tell us what you got.
Well, it's all contained in the interview, Bill, so I'm going to load that and fire it up right now. Here we go. We had a brief chat with this guy last month before a technical snafus hit, but we are good to go this time around. It's Phillies Director of Fun and Games, John Brazer. Hey, John, how are you?
Chad, how are you?
Doing all right,
again about last time.
Stuff happens. We'll be all right this time, though. John, there are a bunch of great promotional events at the ballpark this summer. We will get to that. But first, let's talk about this mostly positive Phillies season. Prior to this Cardinals series, the Phillies had won 5 straight series to move into the NL's second wild card spot. How are you feeling about this team just past the quarter turn of the season?
I feel very good because, first of all, our rotation has been as good as advertised. I mean, we had talked in spring training about Sanchez being, potential dark horse Cy Young. You know what you're going to get with Zach Wheeler. Taijuan Walker has been better than anybody could have imagined. And then Suarez, coming back, just had the first tough outing, but if what we're going to see from his last outing is, going forward, man. And then Luzardo. I mean, how about Luzardo? I think one of the coolest stats is that Luzardo, before 2025, before this year, he didn't throw one sweeper. He needed a pitch in the offseason, and he talked with our group, and he, decides to, all right, let's develop a sweeper. Well, 47.3% whiff rate on that sweeper. Hitters are hitting 179 against it. So I think that's pretty effective. So he's been a revelation. Starting pitching has been great. And you also look at, Andrew Painter's coming up at some point. Mick Abel is pitching unbelievable. Yeah. There's a couple guys down in AAA that are pitching great. So, I think the starting rotation has been as advertised. The bullpen was shaky. It's starting to stabilize a little bit. It's nice to see Romano with 5 straight scoreless innings. Again, where Alvarado's been used a lot. Hopefully we can go deeper and not have to use him as much. So, and the offense, we're doing pretty well offensively, very well offensively, and this is without really Harper. Harper hasn't exploded, and he will. He's got the track record, and so the fact that we're doing this well offensively without Harper being Harper it bodes well in my mind. And I think Thompson's starting to settle into a lineup with, Stott. I think we've always looked at Stott as a leadoff hitter. He's fast, sees a lot of pitches, but he's been really unbelievable. I mean, he's since he's been in the leadoff spot, I think he's got a 4.55 on base percentage in the first at bat of a game. He's got 10 hits and 3 walks. He's seen, this is important too, he's seen 103 pitches in 22 leadoff at bats, which is second in the majors behind Max Muncy. So he's seeing pitches similar to that 93 team when Lenny Dykstra was leading off. Those guys were able to see the arsenal of pitches, when they're coming up second, third, fourth. And Stott's he's a tough out at that top of the order. And that also allows Schwarber to, give some protection to Harper and clean up, basically create a lot of RBI potential situations. So all
John,
good.
You mentioned Bryce Harper and, the fact that he's not looking like the Bryce of old. He's getting up there. He's 32 now. Are you worried at all about him, or is this just
I'm not at all. I think this is just a blip, that we're a month and a half into the season. Not at all. I think he is going to warm up. I just think sometimes, guys go through this, and you look at the back of his baseball card, and he's too good for this to be a long trend.
And Kyle Schwarber, you mentioned having a terrific season, the long streak, 14 homers as of Tuesday. Man, are we going to make sure to bring Schwarber back next year, re-sign that guy?
Well, I'm sure we are trying everything we can. Believe me, he's not only as important on the field, but he's almost as important off the field. He really is the clubhouse leader. He's the glue of the team. He's so likable, and he's brings such a great presence to this team. But I mean, it's also rare that you see someone at a not late stage in his career, but that makes adjustments. And if you think about it, he was not very good against left-handed pitchers up until last year. Last year he hit 300 against left-handed pitchers, and this year he's hitting 306 with power. Half his home runs are against lefties, and so it's tough to pitch to him now. And he's become, he's always been, had a very good eye. He's an on-base machine, whether it's again walks, singles. He's hitting the other way. I mean, he is a complete package. It's really fun to watch.
I want to talk about some of the upcoming promotions at the ballpark. I'm going to be there this Friday, and it is a bobblehead night. I love the bobbleheads, specifically this time, Zach Wheeler. Do folks still love the bobbles, or is it just me?
Oh, folks love the bobbles. You kidding me? It's that they'll never, there's certain items that we've done that have gone out of style. Bobbles, for however long they've been. Yes, you're looking right now at the Johnson Control Zach Wheeler bobble figurine, and that's to all fans. We've got a bunch of cool. We've got a Kyle Schwarber bobble coming up on June 14th. It looks like a little card. It's called a card show bobble. We've got on July 18th. We've got a Pico JT Real Muto bobble, which is pretty cool. I'm trying to think, we also have another. We have a Bryce Harper Funko Pop collectible, which is on August 30th. So that's pretty cool. So again, it never gets old, these bobbles.
Nice.
And we try to do a little twist, as I mentioned, with the Bryce Harper, the Funko Pop collectible, and then the Kyle Schwarber. Still a bobble, but just a little variation on it.
I know there are some live music nights. There are fireworks shows, a pickleball night. John, you look like a pickleball guy. Do you play?
I play a handful of times. I actually play a weirder sport called platform tennis. Paddle tennis, platform tennis, been around for years. A lot of the golf clubs have these courts, and it's 11-foot chicken wire fence, and it's kind of like racquetball meets squash meets tennis. So it's a good game for someone old like me.
Nice. One of the big nights, I guess, would be August 1st, the Wall of Fame night. And this is a big one this year. Jimmy Rollins and Ed Wade. What do you know about that?
It's going to be great. I mean, Jimmy Rollins will be, I guess, the second of that 2008 team, right? Pat Burrell is in there.
Yep.
So it's great to see Jimmy. Well-deserved. Obviously, he's the all-time hits leader for the organization. And we all love Jimmy. And then Ed Wade, good for Ed. We just had him on. I host a radio show, as you know, and we had Ed on as a guest last week. And, Ed's footprint is all over that 2008 team, whether it's Chase Utley and Pat Burrell, and, most of the guys that were on that team were under Ed's direction. So it's glad to see that he's getting the credit that I believe he deserves.
And we should note that Charlie Manuel and I guess Pat Gillick are also on the Wall of Fame. Do you expect a run now of those 2008 guys over the next few years?
There will be a run. I mean, you think about a lot of the guys, and with that, I mean, Ryan Howard being the obvious one, and then so there's some other obvious ones too. And that's a team that I, worked with very closely. So I think a lot of people in our organization that have been here for a while are looking forward to that run.
All right. A lot of great promotions, as we said. But I got to ask you about something else, John. When I was down in Clearwater in mid-March, you told me a story that I had somehow never heard before. We were talking about players' walk-up music, which had started to become a thing for some teams in the early 90s. And then I guess the Phillies around 94, which happened to be your first year working in the Phillies marketing department. And you ended up having an interesting conversation with none other than Lenny Dykstra. John, the floor is yours. Tell us about that.
How much time do I have? There was a writer from MLB that was doing a story on walk-up music, and someone pointed him to me and said, "You ought to talk to John. He's got a good story." So it ended up being, after I told him the story, I think they said this might have been the first time a player has asked for certain music when they come up to bat. And it was, as you said, it was 94, my first year. And back then, a lot of us had game day jobs. And Tom Burgoyne was a backup Fanatic at the time, was doing the music in 93. He became the best friend of the Fanatic in 94. And then they needed someone to do the music. I get hired. I guess my boss found out I was into music. So I was up there, the DJ basically. And he had carts. If you remember the old radio stations, the carts. And sometimes we had cassette tapes. And we do sound effects, and I would play the music for players as they're coming up to bat without, again, this is before players were asking. Well, Larry Shank, our head of PR, came up to me and said, "Lenny Dykstra is looking for you." Well, I had met Lenny a couple of times, but I thought I was in trouble. I thought I said something on the radio that was going to get me in trouble. And so I went out to him, and he's out in the outfield, and I'm in my khakis and golf shirt, and it's batting practice, balls flying all over the place. And he said, "Dude, we got to change some things up. I want you to play Hooting the Blowfish, Hold My Hand, first at bat." So at first I'm relieved because I know I'm not in trouble anymore. Second, I'm thinking this is kind of strange because balls are flying all over the place. And Lenny's asking me for, a certain song. And he called me out here to ask me for that certain song. And as I'm about to leave, he said, "No, dude, we got another one. I want you to play Tom Petty, Don't Back Down when I come up." And then again, I'm like, okay. How about the third time? He said, "You played that song, Philadelphia Freedom. I like that one. Play that one." Third time. And then I said, "How about the fourth?" He's thinking for a long time, chewing tobacco, going everywhere. And he said, "If I get a hit on any of those three, just play that one again." And I said, "All right." And then he said, "Don't tell anybody, man." So I walked away, and I get up in the booth, and it's like a little fraternity up there. And whatever song I'm playing for Lenny, everyone's got a comment on it. And I kind of held firm. And then the second game, I'm doing the same thing. And they're like, "Dude, you're playing Elton John again. You're playing Hooting the Blowfish again." And finally, I think Lenny went 1 for 8, and I realized he probably doesn't want this as much as I do, or as much as I do. So I stopped, and Lenny never said anything, and but that ended up being the first walk-up. I guess he was really the first walk-up song by a player.
That is a great story. Did Lenny ever settle on a walk-up song after that stuck with him for a while?
No, because I think walk-up music really probably was more in vogue after he got out of the game.
Yeah.
So, but he was everyone equated him with Start Me Up, with the Rolling Stones, or something, maybe Spin Doctors. The Spin Doctors were big in the 93 season. So I think, to me, it was Spin Doctors or Stones.
Nice. Hey, John, I don't have a question for this, but I just wanted to post this picture, you riding a pink pig.
Where did you get that?
I saw it on your Facebook.
I posted it.
Yeah, you posted it, and I just said, I don't know.
That was, I went to Nashville 2 months ago, and if you haven't been to Nashville in the last 20 years, it's changed a lot. And that was on the famous rooftop bar, where Morgan Wallen threw a chair off the rooftop bar. And that was a pig that was on that rooftop. So I didn't throw anything. I just figured I'd ride a pink pig.
Well, John, Greg Lazinski last year hung up his microphone, and you are now hosted the Bull Session, one of a couple of different radio shows or podcasts that you host or co-host. Tell us about those and where they can find them.
Yes, I do. I've been doing a show on WBCB 1490. WBCB, Merrill Reese was the GM for many years. It's a great little station out of Levittown, and I know Paul Jolovitz and Bernie Perrant and Bill Clement, and a lot of guys have had shows there or have shows there. I do a show on Sundays when the team's away I do it down at Keenan's in North Wildwood every Sunday, an hour before the game, again, when the team's away. And then for the bull session, as you mentioned, Greg Lazinski and Dan Baker used to do that. And now it's myself and Tommy Green or Mickey Morandini. And for home games, we do it 12 o'clock at Chickies in South Philly. And for when the team's on the road, we do it at 6 o'clock at a different Chickies location throughout the area. And that's every Monday from throughout the whole season. And then, as you mentioned, I do a podcast, Backstage with Burgoyne and Brazier. We've been doing that since 2018. I do that with Tom Burgoyne, the best friend of the Fanatic. We've had a lot of great guests of late. We've had Ben Revere, which is the latest one, and we had Cole Hamels before that. We've had a lot of announcers, alumni, some of our favorites, Jamie Moyer and Charlie Manuel, and we've had a lot of good ones.
Find those podcasts, folks. Very entertaining. John Brazer, Phillies Director of Fun and Games. Thanks for the time.
All right. Thanks, Chet.
A lot of good things happening at Citizens Bank Park, Chet.
And John is a fun interview. So
yeah,
he's a good guy to hang out with.
Good guy. Yeah, absolutely. And he's busy.
Yes, he is.
He's got a lot going on.
All the time.
Great guests tonight in Fran Duffy and John Brazer. Who's coming to Philly Press Box Radio next week, Chet?
Well, we need time to talk, Bill. So we're just going to have one guest next week so you and I can talk about everything going on in the Philly sports scene. And it is going to be, let's see. Oh, yeah, this guy right here. Our pal Neil Hartman, who is a former anchor at Comcast Sportsnet, as it used to be called. And these days he works with the radio group down at Rowan University, and he helps run some great play-by-play sports camps. So always nice to have Neil on the show with us.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that. Hey, Chet, we're going to get this in here. Major League Baseball made an interesting decision yesterday regarding Pete Rose and shoeless Joe Jackson. They are no longer banned from baseball. I got a problem with that, Chet. What a bunch of hypocrites Major League Baseball is. Joe Jackson's been dead since 1951, pal. And now all of a sudden it's a lifetime ban until you die. The only reason it's a lifetime ban until you die now is because Major League Baseball is in bed with every gambling organization that there is. They're a bunch of bums. And if I was Pete Rose's family, I'd tell them exactly where to put everything.
How do you really feel, Bill?
Well, I could feel even worse if I really was drinking more than my diet green tea.
Interesting decision, certainly from the commish. I guess the good news in the case of Pete Rose, anyway, who, as you said, passed on last year, he finally has a great shot at getting into the Hall of Fame. The bad news, of course, is he is dead. So here's a statement from former Phillies teammate of his, Mike Schmidt, on that fact. Great day for baseball, blah, yada, yada. Congrats to Pete's family, his teammates, as well as his supporters who have waited many years for this opportunity for consideration. And then I reached out to our pal Chris Wheeler yesterday, and this is what he texted me back. Mixed emotions. It would have meant so much to him, Pete, while he was alive, but he was his own worst enemy. Still happy for his family. Hope he makes it into the Hall in 2027, 28, because it is going to be late 2027 when the classic committee, or whatever they're called, will apparently vote on these older guys.
Yeah, and I tell you what, everybody thinks it's a lock. It's not a lock.
Not a lock.
Pete
No,
Rose
some people
gets into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And there's not a breathing person alive that saw Joe Jackson.
Right.
So
but, I mean, his stats are certainly ridiculous.
Well, right, but I mean, you're going to go on his stats. If you're going to go on his stats, you can go then you're going to put Pete Rose in. So,
what a player Pete was, man.
Yeah, what a player.
Yeah.
I mean, it's it's so aggravating that baseball did this, and they can say what they want, spend it in the way they want, but it's more of a travesty for Joe Jackson that he had to wait, what's this now, 74 years since he died. And you're trying to make it sound like you're doing him a favor. That's a bunch of crap.
Yeah. Bill, I don't know what else to say about it. We're going to see what happens on that front. We're going to see what happens with, Rick Tocchet as he takes over the Flyers. We got the NFL schedule to talk more about next week. So we will never run out of topics for our show, Bill. But for tonight, wrap it up.
Let's do it. It was a great show, by the way. We did get it all in. How about that?
Somehow. Let's
thank tonight's special guests, Fran Duffy and John Brazer, our sponsors, the Irish Rover Station House, Cavs Philly Tailgates, PPCC 118 Raz Room, For Jim, Chet, Chesko, this is Bill Furman. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll join Philly Press Box Radio next Wednesday, May the 21st at 7 p.m. You can see us live on Facebook, on our Philly Press Box YouTube channel, and on the STT Sports Network YouTube channel, and listen on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and all the others. High hopes, Philadelphia sports fans.
High hopes.